Where did this thing come from?
It was designed in the 40s by a marine engineer who was trying to come up with an ultra-sensitive spring to balance equipment on a ship. One day, one of the springs fell off a shelf, and instead of plummeting to the ground, it walked down. And immediately, this is where the genius was, he knew it was a toy. And his wife, Betty, sat down with the dictionary and started to look for a word that characterized the motion. Of course, you know, she came to S and said slink, and that was the name. And to this day, she is the president of the company.
No kidding.
During the Vietnam War, these things actually had a use. They were carried with soldiers attached to radios. And a soldier would open the thing up, toss the thing over a tree for an antenna. There are thousands of these all over trees in Vietnam.
This was the antenna?
Yes, the Slinky served as an antenna.
I'll be darned. All right. I didn't realize that. Now, what about this? I had this as a child, and I loved it as a child. It's Silly Putty. I'd always duplicate the Sunday comics.
This is something of a fiasco. You know the way the federal government sometimes will blow $15,000 on a toilet seat? During World War II, it spent a fortune to develop a synthetic rubber for plane and Jeep tires. It came up with this pliant thing that wasn't good enough to be rubber, but it had the mysterious property that if you pressed it against newspaper or cartoons, it lifted the image. They couldn't figure out what to do, and they'd spent all this money. They spent a year trying to figure it out. They sent samples to the top scientists all over the country. What do we do with it? Nobody had an answer until finally a guy who owned a toy store saw it. And he said, this isn't a technological marvel. This is meant to be a toy. He bought the whole batch for $147, tore it into little pieces, put it into plastic shells, and he made $6 million a year for the first 5 years.
Wow, so...
A failed military effort.
This is pretty sad, though, that we have the Pentagon to thank for Silly Putty.
Especially with that name.
Now, what about the yo-yo here?
A dangerous device today in the hands of kids, but actually a killer device originally. It was started in the 16th century in the Philippines. It was larger. It was about this big, wooden discs with twine around it.
How big?
And, oh, it was about so large. Oh. And they would use it, something like